Can you believe it? They accused him of faking everything, claiming he wore that weathered army jacket just for attention, that his flag was nothing more than a prop for show. Right there, in front of everyone, amid the rows of folded chairs, the microphones crackling, and the stage gleaming under the morning sun, they hauled him off like some unwanted nuisance. Who could do such a thing? They brushed him aside, his presence erased before the next name even echoed through the speakers. But hold on. Just 30 minutes later, as the town erupted in cheers, 21 thunderous gunshots sliced through the air, silencing the entire ceremony in an instant. What a shock that must have been. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories. Here, tales of courage and kindness pierce through the shadows, illuminating the raw, beating heart of humanity. Doesn't that just grab you? Are you ready to dive into what really happened that day? Trust me, this is a story that'll grip your soul and linger long after the last echo fades. His name wasn't on any list, not a single badge, no reserved seat, no welcoming introduction. Picture this, just an old man in a faded army jacket, clinging to a folded flag so tightly against his chest it seemed like it was holding him together. Every Memorial Day, without fail, he showed up early, same bench near the front row, same quiet resolve, same flag cradled in his hands. Isn't that dedication something extraordinary? Yet there he sat, unnoticed, a silent sentinel of memory. His name was Joseph Harper, and get this, he hadn't missed a single ceremony in 47 years. 47 years of showing up, honoring the fallen, keeping the flame alive. But this year? The new committee had no clue about his steadfast tradition. The warm faces that once greeted him were long gone, replaced by strangers who didn't know his story. The town had shifted, can you feel the loss? Traditions had withered into hollow formalities, the local Veterans Council had dissolved into memory, and now the tourism office was in charge, treating the event like a glossy photo op for good press. How could they let it come to this? At 9:45 a.m., just 15 minutes before the ceremony kicked off, a young event coordinator strutted up to him, clipboard clutched tight, flashing an apologetic smile that never reached her eyes. How insincere was that? "Sir, are you with one of the listed families?" she asked, her tone clipped. He didn't say a word, just pure, heavy silence. She tried again, undeterred, "These seats are reserved. Do you have a name tag or credential?" He lifted that folded flag ever so slightly, as if it were his badge of honor, his proof of worth. Didn't that say everything? But she didn't get it, how could she miss it? "If you don't have identification, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to move to the general seating," she said, her voice cold and detached. He gazed at the stage, then at the memorial wall behind it, so many names, so many stories, and murmured with quiet strength, "I've sat in that spot since 1976. Didn't that mean anything to her? Apparently not. She waved for help, and 2 security staff marched over, polite but firm, their presence looming. What an outrage. They told him to move, but he held his ground. Can you blame him? He said he'd rather stay right where he was. One of them pointed at the badge on his jacket and sneered, "That's not a real unit." How dare he question that? Joseph stayed silent, dignity unbroken. Slowly, he stood, gripping the flag even tighter, his hands trembling with resolve. But then, as one of the guards reached for his arm, the flag slipped, oh no, and hit the pavement with a soft thud. Heads turned nearby. Couldn't someone have stepped in? A few phones shot up, snapping the moment. Can you imagine the humiliation? The flag wasn't trampled, thank goodness, but not a soul moved to help him pick it up. Alone, he bent down, his old bones creaking, and scooped it up with both hands, pressing it back to his chest like a lifeline. Then came the walk, short, brutal, not escorted or arrested, just dismissed like he was nothing. He didn't argue, didn't shout. He shuffled down the center aisle as folding chairs squeaked and faces turned away. How could they just ignore him like that? One woman muttered under her breath, "He probably just wants attention." Really? The mayor, hovering just off stage, glanced over and asked a staffer what was going on. When he heard, he shrugged, and said, "Then just get him off camera." Off camera? Joseph kept walking, past the last row, vanishing behind the media tent, out of sight, out of their shallow minds. How heartless can you get? A staffer called after him, "Where are you going?" "Doesn't matter," he replied, his voice steady as steel, and he kept right on walking. What strength in those 2 words! At 10 a.m. sharp, the ceremony kicked off like clockwork. The color guard marched in, crisp and proud, the national anthem blared over the speakers, and the crowd stood, then sat, all in perfect rhythm. The mayor welcomed everyone with a speech he didn't even write, pausing dramatically in all the wrong spots. How awkward was that? The first name rang out, then the second, each followed by a somber bell chime from a portable speaker. The front rows clapped politely, while a drone hummed overhead, filming this so-called unity and sacrifice. But was it real, or just a polished facade? No one noticed the man lurking under the tree line at the park's far end, arms crossed, dark shirt, standing still as stone, eyes locked on the scene. He'd watched Joseph Harper walk away, and that name burned in his mind. Why? Because it was etched into every training hall he'd ever seen: Sergeant First Class Joseph R. Harper, Recon, Korea, POW escapee, a shadow, a ghost, a legend. He pulled out his phone, made one call, and said just 6 words: "It happened. You know what to do." Then he hung up. What was brewing in that moment? Back on stage, a youth choir sang "God Bless America," their voices soft and sweet, such a contrast to what happened earlier. A city official droned on about community, remembrance, unity, pretty words that felt empty when you recalled the old man's disgrace just 15 minutes before. People trickled in, the mood shifted, and Joseph's moment seemed to fade. But had it really? Then, at 10:31 a.m., as the mayor stepped up to announce the wreath-laying, a sound ripped through the air, loud, sharp, pure military might. One shot, a pause, then another, and another. Boom! 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 7 riflemen burst from behind the trees, plainclothed in boots and black shirts, their spacing flawless, no orders shouted, no warnings given. They raised their rifles, fired as one, lowered, fired again, then once more, 3 volleys, 21 shots. People screamed at first, can you imagine the panic, then froze, then stood, realizing this wasn't chaos. It was a salute, perfect and solemn. What a tribute. One of them, tall, lean, shaved head, a scar slashing above his eyebrow, stepped forward and faced the crowd. His voice boomed, not with rage, but with raw authority. That was not for your program. That was for Sergeant Harper, who you threw out 30 minutes ago. No one budged. Who would dare? For a few seconds after that last shot, everything stopped, the echo hung in the air, hauntingly still. The crowd was a statue garden, the mayor's mouth twitched like he might speak, but nothing came out. The choir cut off mid-note, and a photographer near the stage lowered his camera, stunned. Could you feel the weight of that silence? The 7 riflemen stood tall, rifles down, eyes straight ahead, pure discipline. But it was the 8th man, the one who'd spoken, who moved to the center of the square, each step slow and heavy, like he carried history itself. He didn't yell, he didn't need to. You forgot him, he said, staring at the stage, not the crowd. You erased him, but some of us still remember. Didn't that hit like a punch? No one answered. People swapped confused looks, whispers buzzing like flies. The mayor edged forward and leaned into the mic. Sir, we appreciate your contribution, but this is a scheduled. The man tilted his head, cutting him off with a single, piercing look. What could stop that kind of power? His name is Joseph Harper, Sergeant First Class, Long-Range Reconnaissance, Korea, he began, each word a hammer strike. Captured in 1952, escaped 3 months later, leading 2 other POWs out of enemy territory on foot with a bullet in his leg. 37 confirmed missions, 6 off the books. His file was classified until 1997. You didn't invite him. You didn't ask who he was. You called him a fake and marched him off like garbage. How could you? He wasn't angry, just precise, and that cut deeper. Heads dropped in the front row, a guy in the second peeled off his cap, slow and reverent. An older man whispered to his wife, Harper. Wasn't that the name from the Valley extraction? She didn't reply, too shaken, maybe. I trained under a man Harper taught, the speaker went on. Everything I am, I owe to the trail he blazed. And you let him stumble in front of a stage built to honor the very names he bled with. You let him walk away with a flag you wouldn't salute. Doesn't that make your blood boil? No cheers came, just shame, cold and creeping, soaking the crowd. They weren't just shocked, they were guilty. One rifleman stepped up, then another, heading for the center aisle, no fuss, no flash, just quiet purpose. Could you sense the tide turning? 7 men now formed a line facing the stage, their silhouettes stark against the morning light. Behind them, the 8th man reached into his pocket with a trembling hand and pulled out a piece of paper. He read slowly, his voice carrying each name like a sacred burden: Private Charles R. Meeks, Sergeant Calvin Dugan, Lieutenant Jorge Rivas, Corporal Nathan Bell, Staff Sergeant Leo Thomas, Captain Edward Ray, and Joseph Harper. Can you feel the weight of those names hanging in the air, each one a testament to courage and loss? The mayor stepped back from the mic, his face ashen, his eyes darting toward the event coordinator, who stood frozen, pale as a ghost, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The crowd stirred restlessly, some stood taller, others edged closer, but no one dared to leave. How could they, when history itself seemed to hold its breath? From the edge of the square, a lone figure emerged, older, his slight limp a quiet badge of battles past, clutching a folded flag tight against his chest. Joseph Harper had returned. Not by choice, but by summons. Isn't that astonishing? As he moved forward, the line of riflemen parted like a reverent tide, forming 2 rows at attention along the center aisle, unscripted, unplanned, yet perfectly right. All eyes fixed on him now, the man they'd cast aside, the man they'd overlooked. He didn't glance at the crowd, his focus locked solely on the memorial wall ahead. What strength must it have taken to walk that path again? As he passed the rows of folding chairs, people rose, not by command, but by instinct. Some tipped their hats in silent respect, others pressed hands to their hearts, and a few brushed away tears they didn't even know had fallen. Can you see it, the swell of honor rippling through the crowd? He reached the front, and the mayor stepped forward, hesitant, fumbling for words or an offering. But Joseph didn't spare him a glance. Oh, how that silence spoke louder than any speech. He knelt slowly before the wall, every movement deliberate, and placed the flag at its base with a tenderness that pierced the heart. His hand rested on the stone, no words, just fingers tracing names, one by one, as if greeting old friends lost to time. What memories must have surged through him then? The SEAL who'd read the names stood behind, head bowed in reverence, then raised a crisp salute. The others followed, 7 men, 7 salutes, 7 names honored in unison. What a breathtaking moment of unity. From the back of the crowd, a single clap broke the stillness, 1, then 2, swelling into a slow, resonant wave of applause. Not for fanfare, not for show, but because it was just, because something holy had unfolded before them. Doesn't that kind of raw, unscripted tribute stir your soul? Joseph Harper rose, turned to the men behind him, and gave a single nod. No words, no embraces, no photos, just a quiet stand, shoulder to shoulder, as the crowd bore witness. The mayor approached again, mic abandoned, his voice tentative. Sir, on behalf of the city, but Harper's steady, unyielding gaze cut him off. Don't speak, he said, firm yet calm, just remember their names. Wow, what a gut punch of truth. Then he turned, walked back through the riflemen's ranks, past the flashing cameras, past the stage, and out of the square, his steps resolute. No one stopped him this time, and no one could ever erase him from memory again. How could they forget such quiet, unshakable dignity? What happened that day wasn't meant to linger, not in the committee's plans, not in the official records. The program trudged on after Harper's exit, but the crowd's attention had drifted. The speaker's words rang hollow, the applause barely a whisper. Something had changed irrevocably. The rifleman slipped away in silence, and the flag Harper left at the wall stayed untouched, a sentinel of his presence. Can you sense the shift that lingered in the air? The event closed without a final address, words felt unnecessary. But the story didn't end there. Someone had captured it all on video, the shove, the stillness, the flag's fall, the unscheduled 21-gun salute, the seal alone with his list of names. Uploaded within hours, untagged, unadorned, simply titled, "This is what you forgot." Within a day, it racked up 4 million views. Can you believe how fast that truth spread like wildfire? Veteran forums buzzed, Reddit threads dug into Harper's past, and a retired colonel from Fort Bragg shared a grainy 1983 photo of a training camp wall, featuring a young, unmistakable Joseph Harper, listed as instructor, Cold Recon. Isn't it mind-blowing that his legacy was right there all along? A former Delta operator went live, declaring, he wasn't just a legend. He wrote the playbook. By day 3, cable news latched on, not just to the indignity, but to the revelation, how easily a hero could be sidelined, how swiftly a tribute could turn performative. One channel aired "The Man Who Walked Out Before the Applause," while another reunited Harper's old unit on air. A 93-year-old survivor spoke, voice steady despite his years, "He carried me 6 miles with a hole in my leg. I owed him my life and didn't even know he was still here. Now everyone does." Can you imagine the flood of gratitude and guilt in that confession? The mayor of Millfield issued a shaky, polished apology, but it fell on deaf ears, too late to steer the narrative. People tuned out officials and tuned into veterans, demanding Harper's name be etched where it belonged. Isn't that the justice he deserved all along? Within a week, Congress faced 30,000 letters pleading for recognition. Seals across generations co-signed a petition for an Arlington honor. The Department of Defense held its tongue until day 12, when the President's office spoke. There are moments when the nation must pause, not to celebrate, but to remember. We honor Sergeant First Class Joseph Harper, not only for what he gave in silence, but for reminding us that dignity is not owed by invitation. It is owed by history. What a resounding acknowledgement. They declared Harper would receive the Distinguished Service Cross, retroactively bestowed, his name enshrined in the National Memorial Archives. Yet he stayed silent, no statements, no cameras, no Arlington visit. He remained in his modest home at the town's edge, where the grass swayed gently in the breeze. The only hint of change. A new flag above his door, not flashy, just pristine, just right. Ben Collins, the seal behind the salute, visited once, no press, no fuss, just 2 men, 2 coffees, 20 minutes of quiet. Then Harper murmured, "I didn't want any of this." Ben replied, "You didn't ask for it, but we owed it anyway." A nod, and that was it. Doesn't that humility just take your breath away? The next Memorial Day, Millfield's pomp dissolved. No stage, no mics, just a square brimming with people, not waving banners, but holding silence like a treasure. They didn't cheer or clap, they waited. At 10:31 a.m., 7 riflemen stepped forward, 3 volleys, 21 shots for a man who didn't need the spotlight, because the nation had finally heard the power of his stillness. What a fitting tribute to a quiet giant. Joseph Harper never spoke of that day, not to journalists, not to vet groups, not even to the riflemen who fired in his honor. He didn't have to. His silence, his stance, the way he cradled that flag like a piece of his soul, it said everything. The country listened, not because he shouted, but because he didn't. No statues rose for him, no schools bore his name, that wasn't his style. But a small bronze plaque appeared by the memorial wall, unannounced, reading, he remembered them when no one else did. How perfect is that simplicity! Millfield's Memorial Day transformed year after year. Chairs stayed, but front rows went unclaimed. People arrived early, not for prime spots, but to leave one seat empty, a sacred void. A folded flag rested there, always, clean, precise, placed by unseen hands. Strangers drove hours to stand in silence, veterans recalled Harper from missions etched in their bones, and kids felt the crowd's hush without grasping why. Every year at 10:31 a.m., the guns roared, not by order, but by necessity, because for Sergeant Joseph Harper, silence outspoke any words. Isn't it incredible how one man's quiet resolve rewrote a town's heartbeat? What a gut-wrenching story. Joseph Harper's experience cuts deep, a veteran who poured his life into serving his country, only to be humiliated and tossed aside at a Memorial Day ceremony. 47 years of showing up, quietly honoring the fallen, and they treated him like he didn't belong. It's infuriating. The disrespect burns. Some petty coordinator with a checklist dared to erase his dignity for the sake of a polished event. That's not a tribute, it's a slap in the face. Yet, when those 7 riflemen stepped up, unscripted, unasked, and fired that 21-gun salute, my heart swelled. That's justice. No bureaucracy, no hollow apologies, just raw, deafening recognition of a hero the town overlooked. It's the kind of moment that demands we stop and feel the weight of what veterans carry. Memorial Day isn't about photo ops or speeches, it's about men like Harper, tracing names of the lost with trembling fingers, deserving honor without begging for it. This story lays bare a sickening truth: we're too comfortable ignoring the people we claim to revere. Society's obsession with performative patriotism, all pomp, no soul, drowns out the real stories. Harper didn't need a stage, he needed to be seen. And when the country finally noticed, it wasn't because of some official nod, it was veterans saying, enough. That's where my hope lies, in people, not systems. We've got to do better. Not with parades, but with presence. Next time you pass a veteran, don't just nod, listen. Ask their story. Dignity isn't a gift we bestow, it's a debt we owe. If we keep forgetting that, we're not just failing Harper, we're failing every name etched in stone. And that's a shame I refuse to live with. Some heroes don't crave remembrance. Some just kneel before the names they've carried forever. And sometimes, too late, the world sees that silence was the mightiest tribute of all. If this moved you, if you think men like Sergeant Harper deserve to echo through time, hit subscribe and join us in keeping their stories alive. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, we bring you tales like this every week. Thank you for being here.